Then that sounds good. Then let us get things officially kicked off here as I bring up different things on the screen. Okay. First and foremost, I'd like to welcome everyone to this session for Sales, Monetization, and Marketing. My name is Ed Thompson, and I run an advertising agency here in Tokyo. In the world of advertising, I do something which is slightly unique, and that is I am actually a strategy boutique. And so in Japanese, that would be something called a kikaku kobo. And my focus is on providing lots of planning that companies can then use internally to run their programs. Also, one thing that fits in with the concept behind Japan Product Camp, at an ad agency, we usually develop campaigns for our clients. These campaigns are very similar to products. And so any given year, I might have dozens of campaigns, or I might have just one. And the lifespan of these campaigns can be something as short as several months to a year to several years. And so while the output, because it is a service, while the output is something that is somewhat ephemeral, it is also something that relates very well to what you are all trying to accomplish here as part of Japan Product Camp. You may all find me on LinkedIn, and so I will include various different links in the chat. And so you can feel free to access these links during the break, etc. Definitely stay in touch. Among the content that I will cover here today is we're going to take a look at business models. And we're also going to talk a little bit about profits and revenue, and then also what is important in the short and long term. It's going to be important to understand how all of these different elements work together in helping a business to produce something that will be successful, something that will provide a return on their investment. One of the other things that will be important in this session is that you will need to teach me a bit about the type of activities that you are currently handling in your challenges. I've read the general challenge decks, but I'm not as close to these projects as you. So there will be a few exercises that we have in place where you can quickly write out different information. And based on that information, that will help me understand certain things that I might want to emphasize in certain ways. Also, during this presentation, there will be a variety of information that is available on a learning platform site that I have called the Concept Design Academy. Some of you have already joined that, and there will be different subjects that we'll cover. Some of these subjects you may be familiar with, some of these subjects you might want a refresher on, and then there will be many, many other types of subjects where you might not have encountered yet that will definitely serve you well in the future in your career. Also within the Academy, it is possible for you to ask me any types of questions on any type of these particular topics or subjects. These are some of the other additional things that are included on the Academy site. We're not going to have enough time to cover these in detail here today, but things such as strategic growth, other things related to, say, relationship marketing, how to establish a growth mindset, different things about audience personas, etc. As we start off this discussion, the first thing that I want to do is a reset of some of the different activities that you have been pursuing so far. And my background in advertising, I was actually something called a coordinator when I started out my career. Nowadays, coordinators are commonly known as project managers. However, when I started out my career at that time, we didn't have a fancy word that implied you deserved a certain level of salary because of the title. And so coordinator was basically the entry-level position within a production company or an advertising company. One of the things about a coordination is that it is a role that does not have much authority. And so you have to learn how to get things done without actually being provided the authority outright to get it done. And the things that you learn to use in that context are actually processes. And once you're able to master certain types of processes, that can help your interactions with many different other people along the way. And so process mapping is usually built around 4 things: how you assign a project, how you structure a project, how you calibrate it, how you standardize it. All of you are working in different teams. And so as a team, there are different tasks that need to be done. Just within the structure of Japan Product Camp, there are also different challenges that have been assigned. There has been structure behind these challenges. As these sessions have gone on, you have all tried to calibrate different levels of your activity individually, but also as a team. And if you're lucky, you've been able to standardize your processes around how you assign, structure, and calibrate. And so those are things that are very essential to business, but of course, those are also things that are essential to how you manage products. The other thing that is important about this is, from being a coordinator, which could be an entry-level role. There are also, of course, assistant coordinators, there are senior coordinators, but then usually there is a move to management. And so one of the things about management, the concepts are very similar, but usually these come with an element of responsibility. How you plan, how you organize, how you direct, and how you control. And so management essentials, if we look at this and how this particular tool is used, many of the times we're looking at how you might score people, say in planning. What is the arrangement and the structure of the teams that you have right now? What's the allocation of resources and investments? Some of you may have joined the Product Academy, and rather the Product Camp. And when you joined the Product Camp, your schedule was basically tame. And then all of a sudden you become insanely busy at work. Life has happened and things have gone out of sync. And so maybe some of the resources that you had in terms of time, some of the mental capacity that you had to invest might be pulled in different areas. And also organizing. And organizing is very much related to the topic which I just talked about for process mapping, and how tasks are scheduled and assigned, how you are creating different methods for collaboration, etc. And then controlling and directing the evaluation of these tasks and projects, and then the delivery of feedback, the alignment of performance. And so if I probably asked you all, how are you doing so far? How is your team doing so far? There might be a few 5s. There'll probably be a lot of 3s. Maybe depending on what's going on, there might even be some 1s. Some of you would be very prolific in the comment section, because that is just usually the nature of projects like this. And I want you all to basically reset, because you've made it this far. And this is a common meme that we see in professional settings. What do people actually learn from group projects? The red represents the information that you have taken in so far. The blue, which you can almost not see, is how to work with people. The yellow part, how to do entire projects on your own. And the green, lots of green, how much you might hate people. However, this is the reset, okay? This is the reset. The thing about projects and the thing that I have to face as a project manager is that whenever I work on consulting projects with my clients, and many times that involves me going in to work with their staff because they have a team that needs to accomplish a certain project. And I tell the directors, hey, don't worry, I can do this as long as you send me your best people. And I walk into the room and they gave me you. That is my reality. And so this might have been the way that I used to feel a long time ago, but I am a professional. I must get this done. And even if it means that I have to do all of this and that green part disappears and it becomes yellow. And so I have been hired by clients to do certain levels of things. The client doesn't care about what is going on at the group level. The client needs these things done. And so while I am talking to you about some of the very specific, granular level activities which we need to achieve, at the end of the day, this needs to be done. Nobody cares who does it. However, if you remember some of the things from the previous slides, how you assign, how you calibrate, how you standardize, that will go a long way to developing a batch of information, which can then be consolidated into one set, which will answer whatever the business issue is. So don't get caught up in this. All right, we're a team of professionals and we need to move forward. The first thing that I want to cover with you today is the topic of value creation. I want to see how well, or rather what type of topics you have covered before, but how many of you have used the business model canvas as part of your assignments here at the product camp? Please raise your hand, give me a reaction, etc. How many people have had to use the business model canvas? Okay, and so I'm not getting a lot of reactions here, but we'll take a seat. All right, not used. All right, we're getting so, all right, outside projects. Nope, nope, nope. Okay, Jana has used it. Okay, all right. There's no worry. There's no worry. We have alternatives which we can use. And so value creation is a very fancy term for what are you selling? All right. And so we sometimes use the business model to explain what we are selling. But there are different things that happen in the business model if we break it down to what marketing is about. What are we creating? There's always a message with the marketing. How are we distributing? And what are we bartering or trading for? Usually things have monetary value, but not everything. And so there are many instances where you are trading something of value to get whatever it is you want. And so many companies can share the same business model, but even though they are selling the same thing, they might have significant differences because of their positioning. In Japan, one of the unique things about Coca-Cola and Pepsi is that you will usually find hundreds, if not thousands more of vending machines for Coca-Cola. This is one example of business strategy, but it is also an example of positioning. And positioning sometimes has a very physical component. And so by Coca-Cola being on most street corners, and given that there's a finite amount of space on street corners, they might have blocked out certain elements of their competition just by that alone, by their positioning. And this helps them as part of their value chain, what their value proposition is and what their revenue model is. Many of you buy from the convenience stores. Some of you will buy from a vending machine in a pinch. Some of you might even prefer to buy from vending machines. But there is a psychology behind a lot of that. And so as part of value creation, we want to understand the customer profile. We want to understand the product offer, the value proposition, and revenue generation. The first task that I want you to do as part of this session is to take about 10 minutes and I'm going to send a link to a PowerPoint you can download, and you will basically fill out your understanding of these 4 areas: the customer profile, the product offer, the value proposition, and how revenue is generated. And we are going to use that information as we talk more about certain aspects of sales and monetization. The main thing that I will cover in today's session is going to be the CLV, the customer lifetime value. And so there are some things that we buy only once, and our lifetime value to the company that makes that product is based around that one purchase. There are other things that we will use over the course of months, over the course of years, or even decades. And so our lifetime value to these businesses or organizations can change greatly because of that. And so value creation, this is the chart which I will want you to fill out. Who is your core demographic or target audience? With the product offer, what do you create for the customer? What are you providing them? What's the value proposition? What messages encourages the exchange? How are you telling them that you are providing something of value? And then what is the revenue that is generated? How is it generated? For each one of these 4 columns here, there are also the 4 C's or the 4 P's of marketing. They're very much related to each other. The consumer and the product for the customer profile. What are the related considerations most appropriate for the target audience? Keep that in mind. Also, for the product offer, cost and price, the value to consumers for the product or service. With the value proposition, the communication or the promotion that you are conducting. What's the messaging for the categories of consumers and products or service? And then revenue generation, convenience in place, access by consumers across multiple channels to the products and services. I use the example of Coca-Cola being available at vending machines, being available at convenience stores, at supermarkets. These are different ways that they use channels to generate revenue. So let me send you all this link on Dropbox. You can download this file, and I want you to spend about 10 minutes or so writing your different innovation here. Okay, the link is on its way in the chat. Please download, and I'm going to give you 10 minutes. It doesn't matter how well you're able to fill this out. Hopefully you can fully fill it out, but that doesn't really matter. This is a thinking exercise, a basic warm up or icebreaker. And I want you to keep the things we talk about now in your mind as we continue the rest of this. Okay.
So Ed, is this an individual activity or do they do it in their challenge teams?
It is an individual activity now. We are
Okay.
going to have them discuss some of their findings in the challenge team a little bit later.
All right, got it.
Okay, so please
we're doing this-
download and start.
But we're doing this for our problem, right? And then sharing
Yes.
it with our teams later? Okay.
Yes, this is
we
for
will-
your specific challenge.
Will we do it individually or as a team?
Individually.
All right, thank you.
So yes, we will gather back at approximately 7:32. Thank you for that message. So everyone focus on the assignment for the next 10 minutes until around 7:32. Okay, everyone, we are now back. And so as part of this, one thing I want to have a very short, simple discussion about right now is what are any of the unique things that you have learned about the particular industry, the product, or the service that you are working on as part of your challenge. And so this is just open commentary, general comments that you might have about the consumer profile, the product, how the product is priced, what is being said about the product in terms of value, how money is generated, or maybe how the focus is not generating money. Maybe it's generating brand awareness, or maybe it's about increasing user usage. And so I want to open up the floor and let's go through the FinTech Challenge first. Those of you who are involved in the FinTech Challenge, I would like for you to raise your hand, comment on any one of these particular topics here: customer profile, the product offer, value proposition, or revenue generation. Who would like to start? Shing. That is the sound that I hate the most. The sound of quiet. Shing. FinTech team. Do we have the FinTech team here tonight?
Come on, we have 7 to 8 people here.
My FinTech team, who would like to go? Those of you who are in a situation where you cannot speak, but definitely can type, feel free. All right. So we're going to rotate back to the FinTech team. Let's move on and take a look at travel tech, Japan travel tech. What are any of the interesting things that you have found about your customer profile for value creation? Riza, please go.
All right, thanks for your time. So for our customer profile, we choose someone, student or early professional in age 18 to 28. So they are very, very influenced by social media like Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat. They are very visual person because everything in their media, it's either a video or it's an image. And because they are still a student or a professional, they have a very limitation on time and on budget. Yeah, that's our customer profile.
All right, thank you very, very much for that. And so these particular individuals, though, how much money are you planning on making from them?
Oh, that's a very good question. Okay, so looking at the research, we found that they could spend about, I could say, 70,000 Japanese yen when they are visiting Japan, excluding the flight. And maybe if we add flight, it really depends on the country. So we are expecting about 200,000 yen maybe when they're visiting Japan in their one visit per person.
Okay, that's very interesting. Let's keep that in mind as we move forward. Let's take a look at the e-commerce challenge. Who would like to volunteer any information about the e-commerce challenge?
Hello, I'll go for my team. This is Aaron. So our product is actually a service. So we are working with Mercari and we need to create a service that drives basically more seller user usage, right? Via decluttering. And so, sorry, if you could repeat the question. So I was listening to.
No, you're on the right track. And so basically anything that's really interesting. And so you have your objective, decluttering is the objective. And so how does that impact the value creation that you're aiming for?
Right. So actually, during the research, I think you asked about user research. So based on this government survey of the Japanese people who are most likely to purchase a secondhand item, They were 20 to 40-year-old Japanese. So I started researching this group. And actually in 2018, for the first time in 9 quarters, the Japanese GDP reduced by 0.9%. They think because of this shift in Japanese consumer preference toward purchasing secondhand items. So we know that there is a market there, and more people are also in 2007, I'm reading some of our research, the amount of people who chose to save money has been increasing over the years. So this means that more and more people, instead of buying something new, they would rather buy used items. And so that was news to me. And so I think the value proposition here is that we can offer those customers the ability to find more items that, may not be in stores, but may be able to be, instead of thrown away, maybe they have a more useful life, and those can be used by these other consumers. So I think it's a win for the consumer and also for the environment.
Okay. One of your topics, or rather what the aim is here for Mercari, that is going to be related to one of the topics we're going to talk about a little bit later in this session. And next, let's move on to the Social Innovation Challenge. Who would like to volunteer information about the Social Innovation Challenge?
I can go.
All right, who is speaking?
Teresa.
Okay, Teresa, please go ahead.
Cool. So for my music, I think it was very interesting in that primarily this app is a very short-term app. So this is something we learned last class. It has a good short turn, I think the term was. And so meaning these users will use the app for a very short amount of time in order to strengthen that habit to be sustainable and then essentially move off of the app. And that is completely part of the, I think, foundation of this app. And so there's actually no terms of like revenue generation. It's more, like I said earlier, the company like image and value. And the organization itself is not relying on the app to create revenue. It's more like a team of volunteers is building this company image, and they go out to be able to get sponsorships, I believe, and like partnerships with the government and with the like other companies, for example, Netflix. And so that's really interesting that the value itself is quite short term, but it's long lasting in terms of being a habit of their livelihoods.
All right, that's very good. That's very good. And this is going to be very important to the subsequent discussions we're going to have. And I'm circling back now to the FinTech team. FinTech
Yes.
team, don't let me
I can
down.
go for FinTech team.
All right, who is this?
This is Salome speaking.
Okay, Salome, please go ahead.
So our challenge was basically to create a new mini app in the PayPay ecosystem. So our main task was to increase engagement in daily transactions. And we were given the option of 2 target audiences, either senior citizens or young people under the age of 20. So my team chose senior citizens. So we chose elderly people in medium to large cities. So we found that in Japan, especially, the elderly people, the senior citizens have more purchasing power. And so our product is basically going to go about offering an electronic payment app that eases existing user experience, and that is not necessarily optimized to engage with older people. So yeah, that's what we're doing.
Okay, I have a few simple questions related to this. One is a market research question. And so with an older demographic, for us in our age and our generation, we assume that everyone has smartphones. How much of this older demographic is still using traditional garake type phones that are not really app friendly?
Yes, so that's something that we're still trying to figure out, and we're using our sources to try and figure out what's the best way to target that specific market, because that's a problem we're facing. And we currently don't have the data on that, so we are working on it.
All right. And so I believe that the FinTech team is the one that is assigned with developing an application, correct?
Yes.
And so in the world of advertising, I have had much experience having to develop dual platforms or even platforms that are viable on, say, 3 different, mobile platforms, smartphones, Gattaca. Even within Gattaca, you might have had CHTML for Docomo and NTT. You might have had WAP enabled things for AU, etc. So as part of the challenge that you are all pursuing, is your app the type of thing that also works on simple HTML?
At the moment, we are unable to answer that question. We've not gotten that far into developing the app, so we'll keep that in mind.
All right, I'm looking forward to how far you get. I believe that you all have maybe 3 or 4 more sessions left. And so you're getting to the point where you will have to ship the product. And so it will be very interesting to see how you are able to handle some of those challenges. Thank you very much for that. And so this is basically a warm-up exercise to get us all focused on kind of the same thing that we're talking about. Who are we making what for? How are we going to get them to buy it or engage with it? And what does it mean for us? All right. And when I say what does it mean, are we getting revenue out of this? Or are we getting other types of things out of this? And how does that relate back to the product, the price, the promotion, and the place? What are we doing for this? So let's move on and let's go deeper in specifically and look at things like sales promotion. What is sales promotion about? Another general question that I have, how many of you are natural sales people? You can sell anything. You can persuade anyone. If you're a natural salesperson, raise your hand. Come on now. Raise your hand if you're a salesperson.
How would we know if we're good at that? Like, is there some non-sales examples that could give a hint as to you might be a good salesperson?
Yes, you're a psychopath. Now, so there are different types of, wait, so who said that? So there are different types of things that are related to sales. One is empathy. And if you are empathetic and you can pick up on certain levels of cues, that can help you with certain types of sales, with certain types of projects and products. And so it's not always a one-to-one type of equation. So one thing is empathy. The other thing is a lack of empathy. Wait, you're saying exactly the opposite thing. And the lack of empathy part, though, I want to talk about the dark side of sales. How many of you have ever been conned into buying something? Okay. All right. Whoever sold that to you was really good at sales. And obviously they have no conscience. They have a total lack of empathy. Otherwise, they would not be selling to so many people. But these are different sides of the same coin. All right. And so, but that is an example of personal selling, face-to-face interaction. And face-to-face interaction and personal selling is a very different type of skill from other types of structured sales. Some of you are only going to be selling your services, the product or the services, online or at retail. And so there is a different mechanism that is in place for enabling that type of sales. And so this question about, well, who is good at sales? It's actually a trick question. For example, I am a horrible salesperson. I can't really sell my business, no matter how much I try. Many of you will see me at different networking events all around the city. You'll see me pop up in different places, etc. Networking is ostensibly to a sales activity. I have never sold anything through my networking activities in 20 years in Japan. Ever. Zero. However, one thing that I am incredibly good at is positioning. And positioning can be described as a type of luck, being in the right place with the right thing at the right time. And so by positioning myself in a stream of certain types of opportunity, conversations, settings, etc., that is how I get most of my business. And in another way of thinking about it, it is usually word of mouth. And so the thing that I do to generate sales does not generate sales for me. So networking does not generate sales for me. What winds up happening, though, is people will hear my name in other types of context, and then there will be a few other things that serve as reminders, hits, or triggers. Someone is looking for marketing, they're looking for consulting, they're looking for promotional activities, and my name comes up. And then the person who is trying to find someone to handle this, they will usually say, "Oh, Ed Thompson, I met that guy the other day." And so that is positioning, not sales. And so some of you will find that you are very good at certain types of sales in certain types of situations. Some of you will find out that you're good with other things that help facilitate sales, like positioning. Let's take a look here at sales promotion. And so sales promotion is usually very direct, and the end goal is moving services and products. And sales promotion usually is evolved around 4 categories of things. There are price deals, there are free products and premiums, there are contests and challenges, there are free samples and trials, and pardon me, a 5th thing, events marketing. All of these things can come together to help support sales. So one of the questions you can keep in mind for your discussions later on in our session today is, what are you trying to do in the context of your challenge? How are you trying to promote sales? This is, of course, something that you can determine as part of your promotional mix, but also it is very much related to this topic, demand generation. This topic is where we can go back to the challenge from Mercati. Mercati has invented a movement. It is something that always existed, but it is something that they own now. Decluttering. That's the right word, right, Aaron?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Decluttering. Yahoo Auction has been around for a long time. Yahoo Auction hasn't really, we don't associate it with that word. But Mercati is going to own that word. And so this is part of the psychology of demand generation. When you are strongly associated with a certain type of thing, people will come looking for it. This is also related to positioning. If you are in demand, you are positioned well to be notable and to be desirable. And so demand generation is one of the things that can take part in many different ways. Sometimes society changes around you, and that creates demand. Several years ago, there was the concept of BYOD, bring your own device. How many of you, if you've been working for a while and you've been working in fast-moving industries, etc., maybe industries that have issues with security, perceived or otherwise, and you want to check your phone at work, but that's a no-no. You would like to use your own personal device, but you can't access the company system. Nowadays, This has mainly been solved with VPNs, other levels of security, etc. The market has caught up, but that was an incredibly important topic 5-10 years ago, BYOD. The other topics that we will hear about, IoT. You might be involved in your professional life in things like IoT, developing the Internet of Things, especially if you're in a manufacturing type of company. You also might be involved as a consumer with smart apps. You might be active users of Siri or Alexa. You might have lights that turn on and off when you go into your home, music comes on, etc. And so smart apps, the whole build up to smart apps and these things, the ecosystem that is around it, that is also part of demand generation. And so other things that can help with demand generation, content marketing, paid media, events, webinars, public relations. The Japan product camp is actually an answer to demand generation for product managers. And so these are things, these are movements which can gain momentum and wind up carrying interest. And that is very important because the ability to carry interest long-term can directly contribute to long-term customer lifetime value. It can help extend it. And so concepts that can provide additional insight with marketing, with your marketing programs, creativity, innovation, and competitive advantage. We're not going to talk about those specifically here in this course, but that information is included with a few slides. But this will also help with some of the conceptualization with what you are trying to do with your challenges. The customer journey. Many of you are exploring the customer journey as part of your challenges. And so when we look at the customer journey and the direction that consumer interest flows for different activities, there's awareness, evaluation, the decision, and after purchase. And so different aspects of this journey can change any given time. But your whole goal is to try and present a seamless experience for the different consumers that you are interacting with. The difficult part about this is that there are different psychological mindsets for different audience categories or your audience personas. There are also different psychological mindsets that you have at the stage of your customer journey. A lot of us have blocked cookies on our browsers, and we now lead a lonely life. All those ads that used to follow us from Facebook or Instagram to our websites, to our news sites, etc., we no longer see them. Don't you feel a little bit lonely? Don't you need a new webcam? Don't you need information from Expedia or Booking.com on where to travel to? Couldn't your client in the travel challenge, Ed Oz is obviously not part of the travel challenge, could your demographic, if you're looking to travel, couldn't you target them better if you could just reach them? And so the whole thing about cookies, and I believe that cookies are also on the cusp of becoming more irrelevant with what Google is trying to do with updates to its platforms. And so for other types of platforms, Facebook hates Apple because of the privacy controls that Apple implements within its devices and in its ecosystem. And so, but these are all ways that these ads can track you in different ways. Now, why is this important in terms of the psychological mindset? All of us have probably eventually clicked one of these ads that has stalked us for the 100th time across different websites over weeks or months. And we bought it. Whatever it was, we finally bought it. And so at a different stage, at the awareness stage, your psychology is totally different. But what is it that finally made you make that decision and click purchase? You went to Amazon or you went to the brand site and you purchased. And that psychology, this is something that is very mercurial. It changes instant to instant. And people don't sometimes even know why they do these things. So it's incredibly hard for a business or an organization to understand completely why these things happen. And so we take a look at the acquisition funnel here. And so in the middle, we have lead generation, acquisition, lead conversion. On the left-hand side, tofu, mofu, and bofu. These are some very important terms that you want to become very, very familiar with. We use these a lot in advertising when we're starting to talk about what we're trying to accomplish in a brand promotion or an ad campaign and how we're moving people along as part of a drive to sales process. So at the top of the funnel, we are looking at lead generation, making sure that prospects gain awareness of a product, of brands, or of services. And this is what the first cookie in a tracking ad is about. Oh, you looked for this website, you looked for this particular product, you looked for this service, bam, I have you, top of funnel. And then maybe you would like more information. Maybe you would like to sign up for an email. Maybe you would like to like the Facebook page. Maybe you will do other types of things to interact. Well, now we have you in the middle of funnel. You are aware we're moving you on to the evaluation stage where you're researching, you're appraising, and you're comparing. You're not probably only looking at us as an option. You're looking at other things as well. And then the conversion, the bottom of the funnel. Prospects convert by making the decision to purchase, to enroll. And so finalizing a decision and making a purchase on whatever the criteria and the preferences are. For example, I bought a new webcam from Anchor. And the reason I bought this new webcam, it costs about, 10,000 yen. There's a version that cost only 6,000 yen. I could have bought that. I spent an extra 4,000 yen because the webcam I now have is silver. That's why I bought it. They got 4,000 yen out of me because it's colored silver. I did not want the basic black webcam. Why not? Because I am not basic. That's why. All right, very simple. And what is that? That makes no sense. That makes no sense. But another thing, and actually what the biggest thing was, I happened to have 12,000 points on a Yodobashi card that was going to expire. So I needed to use the points. And so it's not real money. It's point money. And so this is the whole, so those of you who are able to use points as part of your challenge, you should definitely do so because it is the biggest scam. It is the biggest con. It is one of the ways to ensure that you are making sales, because how many point cards have you forgotten about in your wallet, in the drawer, in your desk? How many points? Somebody's buying pizza thanks to the points, so we'd love to see it. All right. And so there are all of these other types of mechanisms in a modern lifestyle that wind up fitting a certain type of criteria or preference that becomes the trigger for a purchase. Then, once somebody has purchased something, after purchase, the start of long-term engagements through customer service or loyalty programs as consumers use your product or service. And so this is the thing, people are going off in the chat about the point cards, the T cards, PayPay, etc. All of these things are part of this ongoing after purchase process. And it winds up being incredibly interesting. Next, let's take a look at attribution models. And after this, we're going to take a short break. For those of you who are doing a lot of online marketing, you will eventually have to evaluate the product. Online marketing is very, has evolved quite a bit, in the sense that now programmatic advertising is doing a lot of the heavy lifting for us. And so these are some of the most common touch points that people look at for lead conversion. And also with lead conversion on online, notice that the previous slide, it was separated into these different levels. But when you're dealing with online, especially some fast-paced things, it's all the same thing, isn't it? First touch, last touch, 1 point, multi-point. These are only some of the few different concepts that are behind attribution models. There are other attribution models, W-shaped time decay, individual attributes, but usually people have a tendency to either say, the first time we made contact with this particular consumer is the most important, and that is what we will count as having an ROI attribution or a marketing attribution. Other people will take the look and say, well, it's the last touch. Whatever they did that convinced them to click that button, that is what we are going to count the most. Multi-touch, because of programmatic, being able to evaluate through tracking, through cookies, through other types of means, what the importance of all the interactions are in the consumer's journey, that is where most people are looking at things nowadays. Now, I want to break real fast for 7 minutes, and please come back at 8:10, and we are going to continue the rest of our discussion. So let me share my screen. Okay, so I was talking about sales and the different ways that you can sell things, but also about positioning. And I mentioned that I'm not good at sales. I don't do hard sales. And so one of the terms for that is soft sales. That is the thing that I am best at. And I have created a process or a variety of activities which help leads the people that I am interested in talking to along a certain type of acquisition funnel. And a large part of what I do is actually branding. And so it's personal branding in one sense, but it's also the branding for my company and the different activities that we do. And one thing that I do with branding is I am associated with education. That is actually one of the reasons why the organizers behind Product Camp came to me, because they heard my name in the context of education. Not work, not money, not being paid. And so we get to these things. A lot of the things which your company will provide, it generates a lot of awareness for lead generation at the top of the funnel. And then you get into the question of how can you track and attribute these different things to different levels of activity? What should I consider the most important? Is it the last thing when a personal contact? So in essence, a lot of my business is word of mouth. And so it's one person who mentions my name to a very specific individual in a very specific context. Do you know how hard it is to replicate that? I usually don't get that same person introducing me to multiple people. It just happens once in a blue moon. And so how can I track that? What am I looking at? Am I looking at first touch? Am I looking at last touch? Am I looking at multi-touch? And so in offline, in the real world, that's very hard, but that has become very, very easy in the context of programmatic and analytical advertising. And so a standard model for conversion and fulfillment that a lot of you will follow at your organizations is the awareness stage, where people come through with web visits or with different types of search terms. There is contact information that is collected, whether through phone, web forms, email, or SMS. And then there are different types of activities that help you engage these consumer audiences. The emails, there might be calls, brochures, websites, web forms, quotations, meetings. And some of the people through websites and visits, they've already gone and shopped because you had exactly what they needed at that time. And their information is now in a database, but so are all the other prospects in the pipeline. And so when you are looking at sales, this process is one of the things that can be very important. And there are actually many types of pipeline software that exist in the world just for tracking the flow of people through this process, so that you can granularly look at where are you getting different types of drop-off? Where are you converting well? Where are you running into a brick wall? Where are things going smoothly? And then with the order processing and the fulfillment, and then also with things like compliance. One of the best examples that I provide about how some companies succeed and other companies fail is the after purchase cycle. And most of us, we are not the best customers. We're not good consumers. We're horrible consumers. We would not want ourselves as customers. But out there in the greater world, there are companies that have, not perfectly, but they have mastered certain aspects of the customer journey after purchase. I usually bring up Apple and also Apple Care. One of the reasons that Apple and Apple Care is so successful is because of the loyalty that it generates. Apple products are much more expensive than alternatives, whether you're looking at Windows, Linux, Android, etc. But there are some levels of the customer experience that for a majority of consumers is enough. I remember dropping my computer. I remember spilling things on my computer, my MacBook Air, and other types of behavior, different types of acts of God, things that were definitely not my fault. And I was able to go into the Apple store and say, hey, it broke. How it broke, I would rather not say, but it broke. And I would really like it fixed. And more often than most times, it would get fixed. Maybe I'd have to pay something. Maybe it wasn't the full price. And I was happy with that process. And so this level of happiness, what Terry has written in the chat, unsolicited, I got a new iPod and legit, it was the best experience. This type of feeling is hard to replicate. It's hard to put a dollar value on it until we start thinking of the customer lifetime value. Apple probably takes a hit by repairing certain levels of devices, etc. They probably lose money for that in that specific instance. However, if you become a loyal customer who goes from iPhone 10 to 12 to 14, once every 2 or 3 years, you re-up, usually about whatever, 50,000 yen, 100,000 yen, 200,000 yen in terms of what you're willing to commit to the brand. And if you stay locked into their ecosystem because you like iPhotos, you like iCloud, you like having everything seamless on your phone, then it's worth replacing your phone that fell into the coffee mug. No worries, no worries. And so there's a value that can be extracted that is not as simple as what you see here on this conversion and fulfillment flow. The next thing that I want to talk about is the type of pricing models that you might be using for different of your products. And so there are usually four, especially when we're talking about platforms, services: a fixed price, a tiered price, usage-based price, or a seat license price. The important thing about pricing models is that depending on how you change your pricing and your offer to consumers, this could significantly impact your revenues and your growth. Pricing is a dynamic tool that you need to include as part of your strategy. And so having the ability to revise your pricing dynamically can be very valuable, at least once a quarter, biannually or annually. Right now, with the yen becoming extremely weak, we are seeing prices change across a variety of industries. Depending on what currency you get paid in, if you get paid in anything except yen right now, you might be happy. If you're getting paid in dollars, that is, you're probably at the top of the world right now. But what if you're having to sell your product in different ways? If you're selling your product in dollars to Japan, then you're losing a large category of your target market. And so this is why it pays for, we're talking about products here. And remember that, so something like Cool Japan is a product. Cool Japan was a movement initiated by the government to help get people to Japan. And it was a success. It used a variety of different things, cultural things, tourist-related things, etc., to form a cohesive package that would help raise interest and drive tourism. And now we see the government faced with different types of issues. We are still technically in COVID. The government is fairly conservative, but now the weak yen is forcing their hand. Why wouldn't they want consumers coming here, spending all of that nice, expensive foreign currency in Japan to boost the economy? And Corona, don't worry, Corona-chan is gone. We don't know anything about that. We're able to see how this is going on in real time. And so pricing for your different products and services is one thing that you want to keep in mind. And so this is information that was pulled off a website, Paddle. And so 2 in 5 companies regularly increase their pricing report a 25% higher annual recurring revenue. And so different companies have different levels of pricing: tiered pricing, seat-based pricing, flat rate, usage-based, freemium, per feature, and other. And you will sometimes have to experiment to figure out what really works for you. This is the main topic for us today: customer lifetime value. And so customer lifetime value is really built about how long a customer is expected to spend overall, as long as they are associated with that brand. And so this supports the forecast of expected profitability of a business. And we calculated by multiplying the average amount of transactions over a specific period of customer retention. And depending on your demographics, you can have a wildly different type of return on investment over the customer lifetime value. When you're selling sweets and goods, etc., a large part of your target market is children who just love the sugary stuff, and adults like us who never got over that addiction. I'm a recently reformed chocolate addict, okay? And so Lotte, Meiji, etc., they are no longer getting my money. I am so happy. My customer lifetime value has gone down to 0, and I want to keep it that way. I did purchase a box of chocolate almonds that was half price at a Lawson's yesterday. Just cause, not a relapse, okay? It's only 200 yen. They only got 200 yen out of me. Okay, so it's not too bad. It's not too bad. All right, but these are the types of things that are very much related to customer lifetime value. 200 multiplied by 365. Exactly, exactly. And so these type of things, you want to look at the transaction size, the transaction per period, and the retention period. And so a simple calculation for CLV, the average consumer purchase cycle, the transaction size, it might be 5,000. The average number of transactions per year is 10. The average customer lifetime is 10 years. And so the CLV might wind up being 500,000. And so you might be looking at this and saying like, what? 5,000, 10 times? What are these people spending this on? This is the standard tab at a place like Hub. All of you visitors to Hub, or what is it, Ale House 82, when you want to get a little bit fancy. For those of you who no longer hang out at these different types of places where these people that you no longer want to encounter, you've left that crowd behind, you might think that you have evolved and you wind up going to Hacienda and Daikanyama because you're special. And from Hacienda, maybe you find that Rigoletto has, not the Roppongi Rigoletto, because you know the type of people who go there, but the Rigoletto that's in Shibuya, or the one that is in Nakameguro, Daikanyama. You might go to these fancy stylish places. Well, there are a couple of things that are going on here. Hacienda and Rigoletto are owned by the same company. And so one of the things that makes you go to one of the facilities, one of the locations, the branding, the service, the style, those are things that might influence you going to these other places. Even if you don't know that they were owned by the same company, you wind up being familiarized with certain levels of service. And that helps influence your behavior because you're used to it. You like it. And unexpectedly, it is hitting you in certain ways. Yes, many people don't know that many of these organizations or these restaurants or these businesses are owned by the same organization. So over 10 years, spending 500,000 yen at these different restaurants, yes, you will do it. Some of you will spend double this. Your hard-earned salary going to chocolate and going to pitchers of margaritas. What are you doing with your life? All right. And so this is a generic transaction for understanding CLV. The other thing I want to look at is the cost and expenses related to doing business. There's the cost of goods, there's cost of labor, but for our purposes, I want to talk about the cost of acquisition. And what are the expenses for acquiring a new client or purchasing assets? And so customer acquisition costs. How much does it cost to get someone to notice you? And so customer acquisition cost is a very valuable metric to gauge how effective your sales and marketing activities are. The formula is very simple. You basically add the sales cost plus the marketing costs, and you divide it by the number of customers that you are acquiring. And so you can do this per 1 customer, per 5 customers, per 100 customers, per 1,000 customers. And so if the average sale cost is 5,000 and the average marketing cost is 5,000 and the average number of new customers is 1, then to acquire a customer, it costs 10,000 yen. And so we might look at this and say, well, is that a lot? Is that enough? Is that too little? But let's say that you're a ramen shop, your favorite ramen shop. And we all know we have a favorite ramen shop. We probably eat too much ramen. And so this ramen shop, if they spend ichiman to get us, and this ramen shop is near our work, how much is that worth? Well, we look back at the previous example. And so maybe it is someone who goes to a ramen shop and the average purchase size is say 1,000, but they go to the ramen shop 5 times a month. The ramen shop is quickly going to recuperate the amount of investment that it made in an individual very quickly. And so that type of thing, when we talk about acquisition can be expensive, but the return on investing in the acquisition can also be substantial as well. One of the biggest shocks that wound up happening for those of us who used to go to the office quite a bit, and we had a regular routine and where we would go for lunch, there might be 5 different places or 10 different places. Sometimes we bring a bento, etc. But now in our new cycles, because many of us work from home, we work in different locations, etc., we now have different areas that we go to. And so these areas that we are moving into, how are they acquiring us? That is one thing for you to keep in mind, because that reflects back on how might you acquire other people. The next few slides are really about the average acquisition costs. And so average acquisition costs that were collected for different types of things. So for travel industry, retail, consumer goods, manufacturing, and in dollar amounts, we wind up seeing that some of the most expensive acquisition costs are in technology. And then also real estate, technology in software and hardware is up there. Marketing agencies like mine face substantial acquisition costs for finding new customers. All of that networking is not cheap. And then consumer goods, etc. And so when we look at other types of acquisition costs, let's take a look at, say, the web. Let's look at 2 things: cost per click, the average cost per click for certain things, and then related to the cost per click, what is it that we are getting? So if we have these cost per clicks for a variety of different things here, and so cost per click for health, I believe, is $6.35 in terms of, like, say, search, and then a network is 0.81. And so it's very expensive in search, but not so much in network display. But what are we getting? We wind up looking at the click-through rates. This is basically what you're getting for the cost per click. And so Google will have a variety of different metrics compared to, say, Facebook. And so if we look at Facebook, we have Facebook cost per click. And then we have the CTR. I'll be providing this deck to you later. And this is something that you will all be able to take your time looking at. But these are some of the things, if you're trying to acquire clients, one of the things about apps, etc., is that the first click that really counts is the click to install. And if you cannot get someone to install, then you are running into some different difficulties. And so that is very unique to, say, ad tech and apps. But for a lot of traditional industries that are out here, these are the different types of metrics that we wind up looking at when we are purchasing different sets of Google ads as an ad agency for our clients. What's the CPC? What is the CTR? How much are we going to invest online? Is investment online the best thing, or are there other ways that we could invest this? And or will we go, instead of with Google, are we going to go with Facebook? And what are the metrics that we are comparing there? The other thing that we want to look at is the cumulative CLV. And so this is over time. And so one of the questions in the chat was, how does a company that's younger than the true customer lifetime usage know how long people will use its products? You don't, but you can forecast, because there's usually, what we would usually say is best effort. You will forecast based on the best effort observed in the market. Maybe there is a competitor that has come out with something similar. They've been in the market longer than you. And so you can sometimes map how well or how long customers might stay with you based on that. And you'll take the best case scenario and also the worst case scenario, and you will average that. And so that type of thing is very important. And so the cumulative value, as I was giving with that example with Apple, it is usually easier to keep a client or a consumer than acquire a new one. It's easier and cheaper. And so there's a decrease in acquisition costs. And so you gain an increase in the share of customer through increased usage. There's a decrease in service and support costs because once people become familiar with your product, they no longer have to go to you except in exceptional circumstances. They can handle everything by themselves. This is why FAQs and Q&A forums that consumers run on behalf of companies, that can help reduce a substantial amount of costs. And then there are additional products that people wind up buying, so that's the upsell. And there's higher profit margins due to decreased price sensitivity. If you're now in the market to buy a new iPhone, none of you need the iPhone 14. None of you need the iWatch Ultra. Some of you are probably planning right now when you are going to buy these things. You do not need them. However, me talking to you right now, telling you that you do not need this has no effect whatsoever. It's just like the people who are addicted to chocolate. There are some people with their screen off, they've gotten the prompt to eat chocolate, and they are munching on chocolate right now as we speak. Don't worry, I used to be you, all right? And the really bad cycle, when we talk about decreased price sensitivity, you're going to buy an iPhone 14 that costs upwards of $150,000 or $200,000, depending on the features that you get in it. That's a new computer. You already have 2 computers. You do not need this. I am yelling at you. You do not care. You are numb. It's just like the people eating chocolate. They know they should stop. They cannot stop. All right. What about dynamic island? Yes. Yes. Demand generation. That is demand generation. They came up with a fancy term for a feature that you will never use. You will use it once, maybe, and then you will forget about it until somebody mentions it again. This is how they get you. This is marketing. When it's done really well, you don't care because you're desensitized. You like it. You want to give people your money. This is what we are after with marketing. That is really the holy grail. And so things about cumulative CLV, increased revenue, and the share of the customer means increased revenue. Reduced serving costs, that means more cost benefits. Increased word of mouth, that reduces the customer acquisition costs. Decreased price sensitivity also increases revenue, and increased retention and loyalty, longer revenue stream over the course of time. And so the other thing that's bad about the chocolate industrial complex is they start you off with the boxes of Meiji chocolate. Then you go to like the luxury level of like, what is it? The little small packets of Meiji that has like caramel filling in it or something like that with the almond and the macadamia. And then you just totally lose it. You start hanging out in the food supermarkets at the Mitsukoshi or the Takashima like supermarkets downstairs where they have the chocolate section, and you can choose your individual chocolate, okay? The one that's made just for you. And you wind up spending $10 for 2 pieces of chocolate, 1,000 yen for 2 pieces of chocolate. Hey, these are all stories are personal. All stories are personal, but don't worry. These stories will sometimes wind up being your stories as well, because there's the psychology behind it. Different people have different things that make them feel comfortable. I'm not the one who is asking people to include their favorite ramen shop in the chat, okay? You're trying to get market information here because these are the things that make you happy. You see a name and you're like, I don't know where that is. I'm going to search that and I'm going to go, all right, as soon as possible. These are the psychology of consumers. And so brands that can stay in touch with that, those are the ones that are able to increase the cumulative customer lifetime value. The next thing that I want you to do is take a look at this chart. This chart in Excel is going to be something that you can create, and you're going to create this again individually. Let me send you all the link to this. Hold on one second. Okay, and so I've just sent you the link to this particular document. And this particular document is for customizing your CLV. And so let me go in here and do something real quick. Let's delete that and let's duplicate this. And so this chart is basically so that you can test certain things related to the customer lifetime value of your product or service. This is important because there may be certain types of inflection points that you can take a look at. And so this is basically a 10 or 11-year plan, but you can also think of it as 10 months, 10 or 11 months, 10 or 11 weeks. The customer cycle that you might have might be very short, and or it could be extremely long. And so you will be able to use this to take a look at that. And what I want you to become not an expert at, but just familiar with. And so we will take a look at how much does it cost to acquire a new customer. And let's take the example of a ramen shop. And so a ramen shop, to acquire a new customer, let's say it takes them each month. And so you fill out the orange parts here, and it will automatically calculate the blue parts. Cash flow for these purposes, we don't need to think about. This is going to be a very short term. Where it says year, let's think in terms of month. We have found a new ramen shop that we love. Here's the thing about ramen. The consumers are incredibly fickle. You cannot depend on them. You want them to be loyal, but then you hear that they're asking for other people's favorite ramen shops in like some type of business setting. You know, I mean, who does that? Nobody does that. All right. This is what we mean by fickle consumers. And so in the first month, all right, what is the revenue? The revenue in the first month, you know, for a gorgeous bowl of ramen at 1,000 yen, let's say that it is this person, they might go 10 times. If they go 10 times, then the revenue is going to wind up being 10,000 yen that month. All right. And so if it's 10,000 yen that month, and each bowl of ramen, say they go 10 times, and what does it cost? Well, maybe it's 200 yen. It winds up being 2,000. And so we can go and pull this in. And so first month, second month, third month, they're on a tear. But eventually they wind up getting bored. And so costs wind up going down, or rather amount of revenue winds up going down. And so as the revenue goes down, so does the amount that they're spending. And then maybe the last few months, they totally drop off because they've started going to other places, and they are spending their money on other things. Maybe they've become a vegan and they can no longer do the pork broth ramen, whatever it might be. And so you try and retain these clients. And so once you have them, how much does it take to retain them? And so maybe you have a point card, and maybe the point card gives different types of discounts. And so it doesn't matter what the retention cost is. I'm just putting something in here. The retention costs don't necessarily change across time, but they could. They could be something that you adjust as a marketing fact. And then what is the retention rate? So when you have a new chocolate addict or ramen addict, if they really like your product, 100, you can guarantee 100% retention until something happens. And maybe the retention rate starts to drop off quite significantly from that. And then maybe you're down to just a very small amount. And so by being able to look at this and map it out, then your teams, your different marketing teams or sales teams can now have a different level of conversation about what it is that you are trying to accomplish. And so remember, this is only in 10 months. And so this is only one customer. If we start putting in serious numbers here, and let's add a couple of zeros. We start adding in different zeros. And so for each one of these different customers, we wind up with a different set of information that affects the net present value, the lifetime value, the rate of return, the ROMI, the return on marketing investments, etc. And so even for a very small ramen shop, what is the advertising? Maybe it is the display on the Kanban. Maybe it is the staff that stands outside as the sales cost. It's a salary you have to pay. The staff that stands outside on sales costs, distributing the tissue, talking to you, inviting you to come in. And so this is a way, whether you're looking at a ramen shop or whether you're looking at another type of organization, this is a way to understand what is happening with your brand. So I want you all to spend another 10 minutes filling out this form. And we're going to come back at basically 8:57. And then we're going to head into the final part of our discussion for today. So spend the next 10 minutes working on this form, okay? Download it from the link and fill out the orange parts. You are doing this basically for one customer. And so if it's one customer, then in this example, it winds up looking like this. Each MYN for one customer, but you could use this for any number of customers. If you have a marketing budget of 5 million yen, 10 million yen, 20 million yen, how many customers do you expect? And that becomes one thing that you can include. So everyone get to work, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you discover about your brands.
So Ed, just to confirm, so this lifetime value is basically for the company that they are challenging, or is it for the specific feature that they're trying to build? Like the
This is
any
that's
or
a very
any,
yeah, that's a very good question. But what this comes down to is nuance. Some of those of you in your challenge, you're developing a new feature, etc. And so this relates back to the question about, well, what is the lifetime value? How do we know? Maybe your clients have not even told you what the lifetime value is. They have not told you what the acquisition cost is. And so best effort in your mind, imagine if you don't know for the feature what the acquisition would be, well, raise it up a level to the brand.
Okay.
Okay, take
Yeah.
a look at the brand. If you are looking at the feature, and I think with MyMizu, there is no cost. It's basically about increasing usage of the app itself. But let's extrapolate from that. How much do you think is required to get someone convinced to buy MyMizu, their first container, their first thing that they want to walk around with? So that's the type of question that conceptually I want you to answer, because that is something that will help you, especially if you're looking in the context of MVP. Does that help?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
All
So
right,
this
thanks a
is
lot.
hypothetically if MyMizu were a paid product?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so there, for example, there's always a cost. All right, there's always a cost. And so there's the cost of goods, there's a cost of distribution, and there is the cost of advertising that MyMizu even exists.
Okay.
Yeah. Just to make it easy, you could consider them like MyMizu water bottles.
Mm-hmm.
They have a cost of production and acquisition and all these kind of things.
Terry's asking in the chat if you happen to know the numbers behind people buying MyMizu water bottles.
Maybe like so usually people would buy to support the organization. So maybe we had like 500 or 1,000 people who signed up to the Kickstarter. And then after that, maybe 3 or 4 per month, people like probably bought the water bottles. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I ask a question, Ed?
Yes, go ahead.
So for average customer product cost, so I'm with the Mercari project. So the money that will be earned would be if I go online to sell an item, Mercari would take 10% of that. So I'm just going to keep it simple, like 10%. So what would the cost, like how would I find the cost?
Cost is probably going to be aggregate. And so Mercari as a platform, they have different systems which enable customer acquisition.
Mhm.
And those systems, I don't know what the average would be in Mercari's case, but it's everything from the programmers who write the code to the
Mhm.
data center and the hosting to the ongoing security management, etc. And so for every customer that has been acquired, there's probably a cost that they have somewhere.
Mhm, mhm.
And it could be substantial. It could be 20,000 yen, for example.
Okay.
And so feel free to adjust that. And so make as many sheets as you might deem necessary. And maybe on one of the sheets, you put in 2,000 yen as the product cost. Maybe on one of the other sheets, you put in 20,000 yen.
Mhm. Okay. Thank you.
And that will help you ballpark. And because that's the way that a lot of these things start out, because no one has the answer. And
Mhm.
so best effort, you're going to try and sink it down to how much did it cost for Mercari to find this person first
Mhm.
with his platform? That is the cost. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I guess I mean I assume you could find out, but it would just take a lot of time because you would have to, calculate all of those things that you just said. And then also like how many over a year, for example, and then how many new customers did we get over the year and then divide it, right? Like all of
But yeah, but don't think of it like that. This is really so the mentor for the challenge
Mhm.
has this answer somewhere.
Okay.
Okay. And they may or may not be able to tell you the exact answer. Sometimes companies keep this secret, they hold it close, but there are industry standards. Okay. I quoted 20,000 as a high number. It could be 200,000.
Mhm, mhm.
All right. Because a lot of these companies are startups, etc., and their marketing and operational expenses are insane.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, and we are back. Okay, everybody, raise your hand if you're back. All right, you finished your writing your Excel, etc. Okay, the thing that I would like to do, but I do not think we are going to have enough time. So this is going to be a post-session exercise. You now have your Excel chart. And so with the Excel and the different categories of information that you have put in your Excel, particularly about retention, in the case of MyMizu, what use of the app is about, I believe, is about retention and loyalty. And so you are trying to aim to keep the retention up, and the app is one way that you are providing a metric which you can track. And so that might influence how you are communicating with different people at different junctures. And so this was per year, but remember what I said, in the customer journey of a person who does MyMizu, they get the container, they use the app to figure out where they can get the refills, etc. And then over the course of weeks or months, their usage drops off. And so this is the type of thing that we're looking at there, but also MyMizu, there are individual consumers, but then the biggest consumers that you can impact that will change the way that you are doing things is organizations. Because when organizations wind up bulk purchasing MyMizu, that's when you're really going to see a change in dynamic. And that's when you're going to see other types of possibilities that come out as part of this. Creation of community can be a product cost. It costs time and effort to run communities and manage those things, but they can contribute to extended brand loyalty. So the main thing that I want you all to do, now that you have a simple calculation for customer lifetime value, is I want you to go back post-session, and when you are talking in groups, I want you to consider, how does any of this change the topics that you were looking at here for value creation? Does the customer profile, how does it mature over time after purchase? How is your product offer maturing? The value proposition, and how does the revenue change? And remember, these are related to the other things, the 4 C's and the 4 P's: consumer, cost, communication, convenience, product, price, promotion, and place. And so now we're using 2 different tools to help us better understand what it is we are looking at. We're looking at this value creation template or the business model canvas, whatever works for you. And we're also looking at these concrete calculations as to how revenue is impacted. I think for the travel challenge, you're developing a new suite of products. You know, given certain categories, there is a certain range that consumers can spend. And so you want to take a look at all of these different things, and hopefully in your group discussions, you'll be able to move that forward. So let me go through the last thing. And the last thing I want to give you is a case study. And this case study is based around this famous saying by the illustrious Jean-Luc Picard. It is possible to commit no errors and still lose. That is not a weakness, that is life. All of you who are struggling in your team and you're wondering, why isn't things going so well? Oh my God, we're not going at the speed that we need. Don't worry, that's life. The solution is to do the project yourself, okay? That's my illustrious high-level recommendation for those of you who are struggling, all right? Because at the end of the day, you need to ship. You still have to ship. It doesn't matter what is happening in your team, in the political, personal politics with anybody else. You have to ship. This is what I am asked to do every time I walk into a client office and they say, this is the team that you are working with. And after one day I discover, wait a second, this isn't the A team. This isn't even the B team. This isn't a team. And I still need to get it done. That's what you need to do. And there are ways to do it. I want to give you an example of a project that I work on. And so this is one of my favorite clients, okay? And even though it's my favorite client, it's a whiskey client. And even though it's my favorite client, there are still things that happen that are hard to explain. And so when this client came to me years ago, I want to emphasize what the client told me. Purchases by consumers at retail. Retail means supermarkets, okay? Supermarkets or liquor stores, etc. Purchases by consumers at retail has been identified as the main priority by the brand owner. I am an agency. I live to serve. And if you tell me you want to sell in supermarkets, I will put together a campaign, a product that helps you sell in supermarkets. This was the official order by the client. Build awareness among consumers, increase bartender recommendations, support on-premise and off-premise sales through improved branding. And so I developed a campaign. It was driven off social and digital media, and it was based on this order. It took me 6 months to figure out that the client ordered the wrong thing because the communication wasn't clear. The brief basically wasn't clear. Why wasn't it clear? Because there were aspects about the client's business that I did not understand because they were not explained to me. But usually for branding, what we do is we have activation frameworks where we choose media, we choose the experiences, the audience touch points, and the brand essence. And so this is a very condensed, the next few slides are a very condensed way of understanding how ad campaigns are sometimes built. And so the activation planning has to include the media channels, the experiences, the touch points, and the essence, and we come up with branded communications. We want to create a comprehensive campaign that strongly associates the brand with the drinking experience at premium bars, lounges, and restaurants in Kanto and Kansai. And so this is actually the final version of the campaign. This is not what we started with. Because at first it wasn't the drinking experience at premium bars, it was the purchasing experience at retail. That was incorrect. Why was it incorrect? Because the client does not have any salespeople for retail. They have zero access. And so what the client was basically telling me, I would like to have access to retail. Okay, that's great, but it's a dream if you do not have the mechanisms in place for the sales to happen. They had on-premise sales staff, but no retail sales staff. And these things, this type of lack of communication or miscommunication happens more than you would think. It happens all the time, whether you're dealing with smaller organizations or even multinational companies. You just don't know where the miscommunication is going to happen. It's still your job to fix it. Marketing positioning is something that we usually use for these type of projects. We're not discussing it in detail in this session because that's not the purpose, but we look at the differentiation, the market niche, and the reason to believe. That emotional something that helps convince a consumer that they should invest emotionally in your brand. And so we come up with a positioning statement. And so Ushkaba is the only blended Scotch whiskey that possesses a unique name, original blend, and distinctive flavor palette because of its 225 years of history. And actually the name of this product, Ushkaba, it is the original Gaelic for whiskey. And so whiskey is the water of life. Ushkaba, whiskey. And so that is one very unique thing about the brand name. If you want the original whiskey, we get to say, hey, you're drinking it. And so since the client told me, hey, we're going for retail. All right, well, these are the people that you're looking at, right? You know, men, women, et cetera, older men, younger women. We want to have people know and understand this type of purchasing culture. And as I told you, no, that's not it. These are not the consumers. The client looked at this and they said, yes, this is the target. This is what we want to go for. It is not what they want to go for. It was totally incorrect. The type of thing that we needed to go for, because what we discovered was we didn't have a B2C model. We had a B2B2C model because it was focused on premise. We needed to convince bar owners to buy our brand. Who are the best advocates to bar owners? Other bars that bar owners respect. And so I didn't know it at the time, but I was able to figure out through our strong sales channels on premise, we had top level connections at notable bars in Ginza. Who, if you like eating, drinking, etc., who wouldn't like going to Ginza? Who wouldn't like finding out how things are done in Ginza? And so we wound up basing our campaign against these different well-known bars in the industry. Consumers may not know them, but in the industry, they're extremely well known. And then we created a variety of media, selection of media channels, print, broadcast, social, digital, leisure, events, all based around the program that we would put together. We also had to figure out what was the brand essence. And we're marketing here in Japan. There's language that we use in the States, but we're marketing here in Japan, which means we need to localize it. And so that means hiring copywriters, hiring content creators who can help us communicate to our target audience in the best way. And so we had two audiences. The social media content which we were producing didn't change, but the way we talked about the brand experience now included a lot more information and a lot more insights about the actual bar owners themselves who we had as the advocates. And so the bar owners, in addition to the product, became the hero of our stories. And so the branded communications, we have a core brand message, we apply it to audience experiences, and these things affect audience touch points in different ways. And so that allows us to decide on what the very specific form of branded communications will be. And so when you drink Ushkaba, you are drinking history. That is actually what you are enjoying. That is the brand experience. That is how we change it. This is the actual case study. And so the actual case study, based on that information, which you just saw, which is a condensed version of the advertising plan, we were able to increase sales basically between 7 to 10% a year. And so if you imagine that they have 5,000 bars nationwide, which already have used the product, we're able to generate, say, anywhere between, say, 300 to 500 new bars. All right, that bought the product. And because this always increases and accumulates, we're gaining momentum over time. And so the actual CLV for Ushkuba whiskey, if the client is spending, 10 million yen, SMIN, et cetera, over pulling together the different products for the client, et cetera, to do these things. And if we are getting, say, 500 new bars, then we have an acquisition cost of, say, 20,000 yen per bar. Over time, though, these bars, the type of purchases that they make, maybe the first year, they purchase anywhere from, say, 6 to 12 to 18 bottles. And maybe that is 40,000 yen. But as it becomes a selected item, an item that's in demand, then we could expect to see steady increases. It might incrementally increase, and then it might suddenly max out over time. Because as the bars become used to the product, and there are different levels of the product. There's a reserve product, there's a 15-year malt, there's a 20-year-old rare blended whiskey. And so then top shelf items wind up being selected. And so the average product cost, anytime there's a purchase made, it will not increase as much as the profit that you are aiming at. And so the other thing, when you're in the Excel chart and you scroll down, you start to see the different types of return on investments, the return on marketing investment, et cetera. But over a 10-year period, one bar can wind up contributing 1.3 million in revenue. And so it's definitely worth acquiring, even if it takes us 20,000 yen per bar, even if it takes us 50,000 yen per bar, even if it takes us 100,000 yen per bar, we can still generate good returns on investment over a 10-year period. And then what are the retention costs? This is the thing about branding. When it is a brand that is loved, retention costs either go down or stay extremely low over time. Once it's sold, it will sell itself. That is what being a premium brand is all about. A premium brand or a very addictive brand. And so the thing in this campaign that was very important, we want to boost consumer engagement with branded content sponsored campaign for Drive to Sales. But it was not just consumer engagement, it was also channel engagement. Channel engagement was the most important thing because we're talking to people in the B2B channel. And there were other brands that we would pull together. The promotional campaign had different things involved in it. Two campaigns, one in Kanto, one in Kansai, to try and cover the nation. 48 branded content posts, posting on Facebook and Instagram. This is before TikTok. If we come back, we have to determine whether or not TikTok is where we need to be. And then content marketing and different types of highlight videos, which also wound up being interesting. There was all sorts of interesting things that we found out about this campaign. And so boosted ads worked best in terms of like cost per click, etc., in terms of increasing Facebook likes. However, the videos were the thing that were most important when we look at the channel. In the video, even when we boosted the videos, the click-through rates were horrible. They were insanely bad. In some ways, it made no sense to do it, except the people who were looking at the videos were the bar owners. And so how long were the campaigns on before we decided to review what was best? We would review monthly. And so, for example, the way that these campaigns rolled out was there were usually anywhere from 6 to 10 bars that were being introduced. And so the set of content for these bars included one video and anywhere from, say, 5 to 10 content posts. And as we were putting out the different types of content posts, we would have to see, if we spend 1,000 yen, what works best. Is what type of story is more relatable? Are we doing it just for likes on the post? Or are we doing it to get people to like the page? And so it was usually a monthly review effort in order to see what would work. And then at the end of a year, we would have one overview to then determine how we would move forward into the next year. And so that is the main content for today's session. I would like to open up the floor to any questions any of you might have about any of the content that we covered. There are several other slides that are included here. These cover some of the additional types of activities that we had. Also within this, you can see some of the very specific campaigns that we put out, some of the different results that we had for these boosted ad campaigns. And then there are also other types of topics that are included from the Academy website here. Things about strategic mindset. When in doubt, always start with something very valuable for critical thinking. Research. If you do not know for your brand, research competitors, analyze what you see, synthesize it, and come up with a possible action plan. Also with innovation, you want to start looking at how are you innovating in terms of people in relationship, product and brand, cost and delivery. These have very good, strong relationships with people in relationships. That's about communication. Product and brand is the marketing. Cost and delivery is the sales distribution. And so these are worksheets that are available for you to say, discuss that if you're trying to innovate with the products in your challenge. What is it that you are really doing? Is it the people in the relationships, or is it the communication? Is it the product and brand, or is it the marketing? Is it the cost and delivery, or are you looking at sales and distribution? With competitive, and then also you can score how well you are doing with innovation. With competitive advantage, this is what makes your product or service a success over long term. And you start looking at the business model, the market strategy, market positioning, the marketing management that you have, and you can conduct this type of viewpoint, not just for your company, but also against competitor companies. How are your competitors doing with their business model, their marketing strategy, their positioning, and their management? You may not know the answer to everything, but you can extrapolate. And so Microsoft was losing for a long time to Apple in terms of how it communicated to people, because all it had was software. Once they came out with Surface, they finally had something which gained them traction in terms of a device. Because the Windows Phone, who remembers the Windows Phone? They existed, but Google ate that. What Google did not exist, what Google did not eat, Apple took. And so these are different things. You can look at competitive advantage and you could assume, well, it's Microsoft. They're coming out with a phone. Of course it'll be successful. No, it was not. So that is all of the content for today. Again, I welcome you all to join the Academy. There's a lot of different information that is available there. Some of you have already joined. And I want to just open up the floor to any questions or comments that any of you might have.
I love
Anything
to
is
ask a
okay.
question.
Who is this?
Teresa.
Go ahead.
Okay, so those campaigns were extremely interesting. I'd love to go back to them. You mentioned that the video content didn't have a lot of clicks, but then you realized at the end, the bar owners were the one watching it. And so of course the bar owners were your heroes. And so it was a huge part of like your entire branding. How did you know they were the bar owners? Like what kind of research did you do to find out that they were bar owners?
Our sales staff, and this is very time and labor intensive, but our sales staff goes around to different bars. Our sales staff are in the channel. And this is the type of thing that you, depending on what type of consumer that you are looking at, what type of channel that you are going to, there are some things that you cannot automate.
Mhm.
Our bar owners, most of them still have Gattaca phones. They don't do web surveys. That's not how they interact with the real world around them. You have to go and talk to them if you want information.
Got it. And so sort of related to that. So the other campaigns that we're doing were videos and also like the social media content. How did you translate like the amount of likes from that to like revenue? Did you have to at the end of the year see that there was an increase in revenue and kind of be like, yes, that is causation versus correlation?
The very simple answer to that is before the client invested in this, they were not getting movement in the market. And so the number of cases sold was not increasing. It was standardized. Once they started advertising, they were able to start to see that there was an increase. Here is one of the problems with channel sales. We do not know who buys our product immediately. There is an importer who sells to a distributor. The distributor then sells to their clients. No one will give us their client list. And so there will be certain things that are opaque and remain opaque, and you will need to figure out other ways to extrapolate or relate it. All right.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Okay. And just real quickly in the chat, I am sending a link on Dropbox to the folder that has this presentation and also the 2 documents for value creation and the CLV calculator. Let's go with Aaron. You had a question?
Yeah, just a quick question. I was very interested in the, when we were talking about CLV and, maybe you'll spend money to invest in acquiring a customer, but over the long term, it'll be very, very much worth it. And I wrote in the chat, but like I went to Starbucks the other day. I was trying to quit coffee, but I failed and I bought a coffee. And then I thought it was going to be the last one. And they gave me like 2 bags of free beans, which I'm sure cost them like 3 cents. And now I'm addicted again. And they got me. And I just want to know if does your company, the whiskey company, I mean, do you guys ever try anything like that? Like give a bottle out and maybe to bars, or have you considered anything like that and realized it'd be too expensive, or, that calculation I find interesting. And I just wanted to hear a little bit more about that.
So the thing that we did is we have mini flagons, and these are very small, petite little flagons of this. You can kind of see it here, this beige porcelain whiskey. And so that beige porcelain whiskey, that small flagon, what we basically would do is we would give a set of 10 of those to the bars that we featured in the campaign. And so the bars are then able to run a campaign on site and give those small flagons to their favorite customers. And their favorite customers, so we are doing a favor to the bars. We are providing them with instruments which help them with customer loyalty for themselves. And so that is a type of investment. Not only did we go into these bars and film them and provide promotional videos for them, we then followed up with a campaign which allowed them to interact on a very minor level with their specific highly valued customers. Those are the customers who then go back and continue to buy different pours, keep bottles, etc. in that culture and context. Okay.
Okay, that sounds like it probably costs quite a bit, right? To do all that, like film and give out 10 bottles each and stuff like that.
It cost a lot. I cannot tell you exactly how much it cost, but you can kind of get a good idea from this chart.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, no worries, Aaron. And Miyuki.
Yes, I work for a company that provides 2B software to automate Twitter giveaway campaigns. And I listened to your lecture, and you didn't mention any about Twitter in your case study. So I was wondering, how much potential do you see in Twitter in terms of increasing customer lifetime value for, let's say, direct to consumer type of business?
Twitter can be valuable if you are willing to engage in conversations. That is the key thing about Twitter. Yeah. Twitter is a very conversational platform. And so there are different reasons why I set up the structure for my particular campaign. My agency, because of the resources that I have, is not geared for Twitter. I would need a very specific type of community manager to handle the levels of communication. You need someone who is specialized in a language, somebody who can handle the casual and business level conversations, someone who can deal with crisis management. And that is a very different type of promotion. And given the structure that I have for my particular agency and the type of resources that I was able to pull together, it made better sense for me to be on Facebook and Instagram, because there were many other platforms that I was not on. I was not online. I was not on Amoeba. I was not on Notes. These are different platforms that you can choose, but they all have strengths and weaknesses, but also how can you guarantee that you will be successful on those platforms? The first thing you have to look at is your investment in resources. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
No worries. And any other questions or comments from anyone?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, just a brief comment and a small question. Firstly, thanks a lot. Like, this was really insane. Like, there's so much information that could take months to learn that you kind of condensed into this presentation. So it was really great. Thank you so much. I was just interested to know, like, how you came about this career option, in the sense, like, what about marketing itself pulled you into this, that you decided to end up being an entrepreneur in this field, and what's the best part about your job? Like, what do you love most about being a marketer, being a salesperson? You said you're not a salesperson, but a positioner. So
okay, I can answer that. So one of the things that happens, it comes down to your individual motivation and drive. One thing that I discovered over time is I like making order out of chaos. And so chaos is stressful. You should avoid it. I don't recommend it. However, when I see something that is slightly chaotic, I start thinking, well, maybe I could fix that. Maybe I could help them out. Maybe there's a better way. And so that actually is what the first job that I had, coordination, that's what it's about. You are collecting information, you're putting it in order, and you're providing it to other people who can use it in a timely fashion. From coordination, you become a manager. In that case, I became a project manager. And so now I do lots of strategy. I do lots of strategy and consulting, but my roots are project management. And so I am an extremely process-based individual. And so the first thing that wound up happening for this course even is to try and think, what are people going through? And people are going through the challenges themselves, but more important than the challenges themselves, there are the team dynamics that you are facing. All right. And the team dynamics only matter because they might be producing certain types of hurdles for the completion of these projects. Okay. And so there's always an emotional element to that. But one of the ways that I wound up being able to succeed at what I do is by taking myself out of the process. The process exists. Things will get done. The hard part is not the work. Many of you discovering are that the hardest part is the people, not the challenge, it's the people. You are going to have to learn how to map the processes to be able to accomplish that. If you cannot do that, you are going to wind up with this green part being the entire circle, okay? You cannot do that. Life is too short. That is not what the purpose of these activities are. That's not even the purpose of your real job. And even in your real job, you feel this. Focus on the process and good things will happen. That would be my key point of advice. But that's how I wound up becoming involved in the world of advertising. That is my basic value proposition. Once people start talking to me and they start asking, well, what can you do? How can you solve it? Even with the whiskey client had the option of going with much larger ad agencies, etc. But I looked at the project and was like, oh, wow. Yeah, don't worry. Yeah. With that budget, the budget that you are providing, I can give you that. And if you can find a little extra budget, I can probably do that too. And this is something that was not other companies, larger companies, were not able to provide. And so that is how I add value to the types of projects or products that I produce every year. You know, it might be one large project, it might be dozens of small projects, as a product manager in advertising.
That's awesome. And you're very right. Like, even as a product manager, coming back to your original point, you don't have any authority, but you still have to get things done. And you really have to kind of know the strengths or the psychology of people to make them do the things that need to be done to ship in the end. Right. So I think those are some really great points to take away from your presentation as well. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all very much for attending. Please join the Academy. Please feel free to ask questions. If there is enough interest, I could even have like another wrap-up session after you finish the whole entire program on a variety of topics that you might be interested in. We could go on a deep dive in different areas. So definitely join the Academy and stay in touch. Also connect to me on LinkedIn. You'll find the links in the project, in the chat, etc. And I'm looking forward to meeting most of you on the 30th in person. And then after that in person, as Terry has put in the chat, I will also be doing part of a panel discussion where we talk about design, marketing, and all these other interesting topics.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Ed, and thanks everyone as usual. I think it's time to call it a night.